Thomas Tuchel has been sacked, and as unfortunate as it was, after going through all of the info I could find, Tuchel's sacking, it makes sense. It's not nice for him. It's not nice looking from the outside after how he stood by the club at times of major trouble. But from a sporting point of view, it does seem to make some sense, or at the very least, you can see the rationale behind this decision. Hey, I'm Adrian, by the way, and welcome to Rabona TV, where we'll quickly go through both sides to try and have a nuanced look at things here, surrounding the surprising sacking of Thomas Tuchel just 16 months after lifting the Champions League trophy for Chelsea. First, let's start with Tuchel. No doubt this will have come as a major shock to Tuchel, who allegedly arrived at Cobham on Wednesday morning ready to plan out the next steps for Chelsea, but he was summoned into the conference room to speak to the board, of which they informed him of their decision. He allegedly fought back, asking to be given one more chance, according to reports from journalists that are very close with the club, but the decision had already been made. After helping them turn their season around and win the Champions League, then leading Chelsea to two finals, of which they ended up losing both on penalty kicks, unfortunately, Tuchel's 100-match Chelsea reign was over before he even made it to 2 full seasons worth of management. Have Chelsea been good? No, absolutely not. It's been plain to see for a while now, as their poor form stretches back even further than just the 6 disappointing Premier League matches and a brutal display against Dinamo Zagreb. The one good performance you could point to was actually a draw against Spurs, but beyond that, they've been pretty poor. Were the results sack-worthy overall? I mean, yes, if you are quick to forget that Tuchel has reached the Champions League in successive seasons with PSG and Chelsea, winning it with the latter and coming a couple of kicks away from 2 additional trophies last season alone, on top of all the other trophies he's won with Chelsea. And speaking of which, it was a pretty difficult season for Chelsea, wasn't it? With the sanctions on the club, with advertisers dropping the club, and the man who brought them so much success over the years, Abramovich, leaving the club while being forced into a sale, which cast further questions over whether Chelsea would continue to exist for a moment prior to the government allowing the sale of the club instead. A change of ownership is always difficult, especially when it's an owner like Abramovich, who cared so much about winning, which is rare amongst owners. He was willing to sign off on basically whatever was necessary should it provide the team with a better chance at winning, with Marina Granovskaya, Petr Cech, and Bruce Buck all leaving as well. Those are 3 massive names lost from the Chelsea board to go along with Abramovich. New owners were found, of course, and they were willing to spend money this summer to back Tuchel. Over £250 million were spent, in fact, of which Tuchel had a big say in them, apparently. Maybe he was a bit too involved for his own liking, though, worrying about transfers when he would typically be taking a well-deserved vacation this past summer. Now, stick with me here, but here's the iconic quote from the last days of Tuchel's time with PSG, in which he said, quote, "Am I still a manager or am I a politician in sport? A minister for sports. At its heart, I love the game and I can get the satisfaction in many ways as a manager. I only love football. And in a club like this, it is not always just football." If you followed Tuchel's career, you'll know that all he cares about is the football, the tactics, and coaching. He doesn't want to be the one that is essentially taking over the transfer business. He'd like to be consulted on signings, but he doesn't want to take part in the day-to-day. Going further, he was asked to be much more than just a manager last season, as his club was sanctioned and their future up in the air. For someone who just wants to manage, Tuchel was tasked with taking questions of morality from the media surrounding their former owner, Abramovich. He was taking questions about sponsorships. He was taking questions about how the sanctions would affect team travel, whether they could make signings, etc. He was essentially leaned upon as the spokesperson for the entire club rather than the manager of the first team. Some managers love to talk as much as possible and are happy to do so about a wide range of topics. Tuchel typically doesn't, but he was willing to do so for Chelsea. There were rumors of other clubs hoping to take advantage of the situation to prize him away, but Tuchel never wavered in the support for the club, never sought a move away. All of this while he was going through a divorce from the mother of his 2 children as well. Tuchel works best when he can just focus on the coaching of the first team, rather than all the noise surrounding it. He will tell you that the club needed a director of football as he felt unsupported in that respect, and he had too much on his plate. Speaking of transfers, I'm sure it will have been puzzling for Tuchel as to why the new ownership brought in so many players, provided him with new tools to hopefully turn their form around, only to sack Tuchel days later. However, there are many who point to the fact that the players Tuchel got were not the players Tuchel asked for. further frustration for him. This was the first spell of time where Chelsea had looked poor. They were understandably wobbling during the whole liquidation and new owners debacle, and still managed to make 2 finals in that time. The start of this season, they sit 6th, 5 points off of the top after 6 matches. The performances haven't been great, even Tuchel would tell you, but certainly he deserved a chance to make things right after all that he has achieved. And wouldn't the owners want at least some stability in the club through Tuchel when there are so many question marks around the running of the club for the new owners? Well, Todd Boehly and Clear Lake may not have practical experience in running a football club, but they understand sport. How much of that is applicable to football is to be debated. And the words coming out now about Boehly drawing up a 4-4-3 formation for Tuchel certainly are a bit damning. If that happened, of course, as Chelsea, the club, have denied that 4-4-3 was ever drawn up for Tuchel and his staff. As Boehly and co tried their best to learn the game and work on summer transfers, or trades, as Boehly called them once apparently, they found their manager getting more and more prickly with them. Tuchel allegedly began sending his own agent to transfer meetings as he found that they were taking up too much of his time. Whether he was justified or not, you can see how this would be frustrating for the owners. From their point of view, they just want their manager to have a say in the players that they are trying to bring in for him. While that was also a bit of a point of contention, Tuchel constantly trying to convince them to not sign players such as Cristiano Ronaldo. Tensions between Tuchel and some of the new board members will have been prominent, as Tuchel has said that he was being asked to meet with different board members about recruitment throughout the day, taking meetings at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And with Tuchel not showing interest in those meetings, that will have put a sour taste in the mouth of the new owners in a "we're trying to help you, make yourself available" kind of way. Take from that what you will. And then there were all the questions surrounding Tuchel and his man management. Allegedly, there were plenty of players that felt like they had been iced out by the manager, and then the preseason match against Arsenal came, a 4-0 loss by the way, in which Tuchel's words following that match will have done little to put him in the good graces of the new owners. Tuchel criticized the lack of transfers coming into Chelsea. That's one mark against him. And then he was asked if they were ready for the upcoming season, in which he replied, quote, "I cannot guarantee. I saw today a team in Arsenal who are mentally committed to an idea of playing. A level of exhaustion, a level of physical commitment that we could not match. Also, a level of mental commitment that we lacked because we have a lot of players who are thinking about leaving and looking at their options." It's not necessarily a bad thing to point out that the players, lacked in some commitment, but don't expect the players to take kindly to it, just as the owners won't take kindly to criticisms of their transfer window. Allegedly, Boehly described Tuchel as a, quote, nightmare to deal with when it came to transfers. Speaking of which, Boehly had clearly taken quite an interest in Marc Cucurella, given Alonso was basically out the door, but also in Cucurella's former manager, Graham Potter. According to The Athletic, Boehly had a suspicious amount of knowledge about Potter and his entire career when he first met with Cucurella's agents, knowing everything about his come-up, his time with Östersunds, and his journey through the ranks of English football as well. As the article from The Athletic says, in the course of his inquiries around this deal, Boehly is understood to have been particularly keen to canvass opinion on Potter's man management approach, his ability to manage a dressing room, and whether he is regarded as ready to step up to a Big Six club. Judging by the speed and strength of Chelsea's approach to Brighton this week, he appears to have been satisfied on all accounts. And so it seems as if there are many small factors that have eventually led to Tuchel getting the sack. His man management, his treatment of certain players within the squad, his disinterest in having a massive role in recruitment, little mitigating digs at the owners surrounding their lack of football knowledge, his public comments surrounding transfer activity, and finally, recent results. While Thomas Tuchel's start at Chelsea was incredible, the final 50 matches of his tenure were less so. Again, there are outside factors that affected the club in the spring, but the fact remains, as you can see here, the first 50 matches versus the final 50 matches, you can see quite the drop off. Enough to sack someone? Based on results alone, in my opinion, no. But it felt like it wasn't just because of the results. I wouldn't have made this sacking myself. Not yet, at least. I feel as though Tuchel did indeed deserve a chance to turn things around. I mean, few clubs show the kind of patience that someone like Diego Simeone gets. He goes through seasons where they are poor and seasons where they win silverware. Such is the cycle of life in football. But where it let he stick with their manager, most clubs don't. I feel for Tuchel because he wasn't in an easy situation with Chelsea in 2022, and he backed them through hard times and never sought a move away. Where he was previously seen as a very difficult manager at PSG and Borussia Dortmund, he was quite willing to stick around and really try for Chelsea. He seemed to really love the club. Meanwhile, Chelsea's new ownership have dropped him after a poor start to the season. I've seen worse starts though, it's gotta be said, but by Tuchel's own standards, it's not looking good. And in saying all of this about Tuchel, I don't think that Potter is some scrub who won't do as well. Far from it. I'm a massive believer in Potter, his playing style, and everything he has managed to achieve with Brighton. It's got to be pointed out that Boehly isn't one to chop and change coaches. With the LA Dodgers, the same head coach has been around for around 7 years, I think. So clearly he saw something that he liked in Potter and the great work that the manager had done at Brighton, building a team year upon year that improves gradually, where there's harmony in the dressing room, etc. Tuchel has told those close to him that judging by the way the conversation went with Boehly when he was sacked, he got the idea that this decision had been made prior to the Dinamo loss, as Chelsea now hope Potter can build something for the long term at their club. Right or wrong, I'd love to hear from you guys. I wouldn't call it necessarily the wrong decision, as Potter is a great manager and I think he'll find success at Chelsea eventually. It's just not one that I would have made at this point in time. In September, at the start of the season, where there are matches every 3 days and so little time for a manager to actually impose himself. But that's just me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. But beyond that, have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday. Ciao. Unless I get sacked.